Hey guys, I struggled with what I wanted to talk about for this video. So my problem with the political divide right now is that the right wing and Republicans usually argue on the basis of logic, knowledge, and information, whereas those on the left-hand side argue on the basis of emotion, feelings, and just generally like vibes. And it's absolutely stupid because you get these absolutely ridiculous positions where someone on the left-hand side will always defend an illegal immigrant regardless of the individual circumstances. Like, even if that immigrant turns out to be a murderer or a PDF file, you know, something incredibly dangerous for both children and adults in general. Just someone who's absolutely horrific. And arguing that, like, the right is completely logical or the left is completely emotional is kind of a misnomer. While Republicans and the right generally focused on logic and reasoning, they do get emotional. Like, I get really angry when I'm paying attention to this stuff. And, like, I get really frustrated when someone commits an outright crime according to the letter of the law and they receive no punishment for it simply because they are a political rival to Republicans. And it's seen as unfair or potentially dangerous to arrest somebody who is outright encouraging violence, because then they can use that against you, saying, oh, they're violating free speech, we have to allow them to encourage civilians to start, like, murdering FBI agents or something. That angers me a lot, because, like, there's a woman who doxed a federal agent who lived in her neighborhood, and when she realized that everyone was furious with her and they doxed her in return, and she had violated a law that says that by doxing a federal agent you can get up to 5 years in prison by federal law and then 1 year in prison by state law. They doxed her, they contacted her employer, they completely tried to ruin her life. Well, too bad she tried to delete the video, but you can't delete it because people had already took the video and spread it all over the internet, either because they agreed with her or because they heavily disagreed with her, and that dude's address is just out there for the entire world to see. Like, his life could be completely ruined. Like, someone could come to his house with a gun and completely destroy his life. You never know what kind of nut job is going to go to his house now. And she committed a federal crime and a state crime in one swift action. And then, oh God, now she's freaking out because she's overly emotional, and now she's like, oh my God, my life is ruined. I didn't mean for this to happen. How could this possibly happen to me? Sorry, still, my professionalism is going down the toilet yet again. Now, again, Republicans aren't completely logical. Democrats aren't completely emotional. But when I see the political divide based on logic and emotion, it kind of reminds me of Star Trek again. And I hate to bring this up because I know a lot of people just don't care about sci-fi or Star Trek. But it's like the divide between the Romulans and the Vulcans. If you don't know, the Romulans and the Vulcans in Star Trek are the same race. It took a while for that to come to light in the series, but the Vulcans chose to suppress all their emotions because they were a highly violent civilization that could not control themselves without shutting down literally everything. So they eventually had a Jesus-like figure come to light who decided to put on or bring out the ideology that everybody needed to suppress their emotions and dampen down just extremism in general. Anything that couldn't be controlled had to be stomped out or at least suppressed. And a lot of people in the society didn't want to do that. It kind of makes sense, right? You don't want to completely disown everything that makes you human, or anything that makes you a Vulcan in this case. They wanted to continue being natural. So a lot of the species broke off and fled the planet, and they eventually ended up on a planet called Romulus, and they became the Romulans. Well, if you're not aware, in the original Star Trek, in Star Trek in general, the Romulans were villains. In order for them to learn how to control their emotions, what they basically did is they based their morality on their passions, but anyone who didn't listen to the government, anyone who didn't listen to the state, they had secret police go around and arrest them and arrest their families and throw them all in prison and make sure that any dissent whatsoever would be suppressed. If a family produced a child that went against the state, the entire family was punished. And that fear is what was used to control the emotions of the Romulans. While they encouraged passion and emotion, anything that would cause a civil war or dissent, they would have secret police go around and be you better at least do what we tell you. You better think the way that we think, because if you don't, we'll come for you and we'll destroy your families. And that's what Democrats tend to act like. That woman that I mentioned who doxed a local federal agent who lived in her neighborhood. Well, guess what? He might have a family, right? He might have a family. And now you're putting the family in danger. Someone could go to his house with a gun, break in, find that he's not home, shoot his dog, shoot his wife, shoot his kids to teach him a lesson. And Democrats, that's how Democrats think. That if you yourself commit a crime, that they need to destroy the life of everyone around you so they turn against you, so that they sell you out. That's why they want to get rid of the nuclear family. They want collectivism. They want the kids raised by either the state or by the community, not by an individual parent, not by a mother, not by a father, but by somebody who will teach them the correct way to think. That you can't be racist, you can't be sexist, you can't be homophobic, you can't be transphobic, you can't be anything that the government doesn't want you to be. Because if you do, we'll throw you in jail for hate speech, and we'll make sure to tell everyone that you know how horrible of a person you are, and we'll destroy you. We'll contact your employer. We'll make sure your employer fires you. Even if your employer otherwise likes you, we'll make it so painful for you that we'll make sure that your business, your place of work, is protested and people stop buying there until you're fired. And even after you're fired, we may still go after the business anyways and make sure that they only hire the people that we want them to hire, because we need more women, we need more trans people, we need more people of color in that business. We will subvert and force that employer to do everything that we want them to do, and if they don't, we'll dox him too. We'll destroy his life. We'll throw him in prison. We'll harass his family. It was like when, if you don't know the guy, his name is McNally. McNally is a locksmith. Like, all he does is he goes and he makes shorts, for the most part, where he picks a lock. And then he's like, don't buy this lock. It's a crappy lock. The guy who made it, like the company that produces it, like, this is a simple technique that any single criminal, thief, can learn in like 20 minutes. It's a crappy lock, don't use it. And he went after a company, not specifically, he'll go after any bad lock, any lock that makes a claim that's false. He goes through and he proves it wrong. He doesn't go after families, he doesn't go after individuals, he doesn't go after the people who work at the company. He just takes the lock, he picks it, and then he says, this is the problem with the lock, it's crappy, don't use it. Or he doesn't even encourage people to not use it. He will say, like, this is the lock, this is how easy it is to pick, and then he'll just literally throw it off screen. What have you. Well, he picked a lock by a company called Proven Locks. And he showed, like, they said, they made a claim that you couldn't use a shim, which a shim is a little piece of metal you stick in between a gap in the lock, and then you twist it, hook it onto something, and then pull it to release the latch. And you can make a shim out of a beer can, for example. And he did this with a Proven lock that Proven, the company, said that it was impossible to shim. Well, they sent him a cease and desist because obviously that would hurt their sales. And then he just went along, and then he took more of their locks and proved, like, again, another claim that the company made was false advertising, which, by the way, when you falsely advertise, you can be sued by the people who buy the product. So it was opening them up to lawsuits too. And then they went after his wife. They sent, like, messages to his wife. And then they said, like, oh wait, we didn't mean to do that. Like, we meant to send you the message directly, which was total BS. They had already gotten in contact with him by his own cell phone, by his own email address. Like, they had found his information and they were contacting him directly. So there was no reason to think that his wife's number was somehow his number. So he got mad. But instead of, like, you know, suing or getting, like, really upset, like, throwing threats around, he just bought more and more Proven locks. And he showed each and every one of them had a fatal flaw that could get them picked in literal seconds. Like, in less than a minute, he completely dismantled these locks. And sometimes he didn't even have to pick the lock. All he had to do was unscrew something and the entire lock would just fall apart. And he just, like, completely dismantled that company to the point where hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people, have now seen how crappy these locks are. That's a completely emotional reaction by Proven Locks. And that's often what Democrats do. If you reveal anything, if you, like, reveal any amount of corruption, they go after your family. They contact your close relatives. They dox you. They try to that's why people are so mad at Tim Walz. Because a lot of people came out and said, hey, there's corruption with these programs. And it may not be the government's fault, but we're seeing a lot of people stealing our money. And it's really obvious. So what did Tim Walz do? Did he report it to the feds? Did he, like, go after the people committing the fraud? No, he had the people the whistleblowers, who are all Democrats, by the way. The vast majority of them were Democrats. He had them fired. He went after their families. He shut them up. He threatened them. maybe not directly, but he sent the police after them, or whatever. He just did whatever he could to shut up these people so that they would stop revealing the fraud, because the fraud made him look bad. And again, you want your administration to have no controversies. You don't want anything bad to be reflected on you. It kind of makes sense. But it was why I voted for Obama for his second term, which was my first major presidential election. And the reason is because the news never reported on any controversies. They never talked about how he killed an American citizen. They never talked about how he was bombing people extrajudicially. They never talked about anything that he did wrong. So I thought, quite reasonably, honestly, that he hadn't done anything wrong. That, while he wasn't a good president, while he hadn't done anything particularly noteworthy, or hadn't accomplished basically anything during his term, I thought, well, at least we know he's not, offensive. He hasn't done anything, corrupt or vile. And eventually, I found out that the entire system, from the media on down to the federal government and the state governments, were all highly corrupt. My innocence was completely destroyed. And then, after it started to be revealed that there was so much going on, then I started to find out that people who tried to speak out, Democrats who didn't agree with the corruption going on, that their lives were ruined, that some of them ended up dead or whatever, either by their own hands or by nut jobs, who may not have been ordered to do it, but they were so on board with protecting Obama or whoever, that they eliminated people that they thought was a threat, even if they weren't told to do so. Now, there are people out there that will say, oh no, Obama did have these people killed, or Tim Walz did kill that woman, that House Speaker. And, well, we can't prove that, and there's no evidence that they were involved in those deaths. The rhetoric of the Democrats in general causes violence. When they say that Trump's ICE is the modern day Gestapo, they're basically saying that Trump is a Nazi, Trump is a mid-century German, and his ICE is mid-century Germans. And what's the common question, philosophical question? If you could be sent back in time to end the life of a baby dude who eventually would grow a very distinct mustache, again, as a baby, when he was innocent, would you do it? And a lot of people will say yes. So, using that mindset, they'll go out and they'll try to eliminate someone now before they grow a funny mustache and start, destroying the lives of millions of people. Because they honestly think that Trump is that kind of person, which he's proven time and time again that he would never do anything even remotely similar. But they are just so convinced that Trump is a fascist that they'll go out of their way to try to eliminate him, which is what happened with Thomas Crook, which was what happened to that House Speaker. Now, the guy who killed the House Speaker of Minnesota said that Tim Walz sent him to do it. Now, he could just be a crazy person, and that's the general accepted consensus, but maybe he's just trying to put the blame on somebody else so he gets a lesser sentence? Maybe. Or maybe Tim Walz did one of those won't someone rid me of this priest kind of thing. Now, if you don't know that story really quickly, back in the day, the King of England, or was it the King of the United Kingdom? I'm not sure if it was England or the United Kingdom at that point. Either way, the king had a priest who always criticized him, that always spoke bad about him. And he said out loud, "Won't someone rid me of this priest?" Now, he didn't give a direct order for the priest to be harmed, at least in theory, but a bunch of knights heard that, and they said to themselves, okay, the king wants this guy gone, we're going to rid the king of this guy. And they went out, and they just stabbed the dude, and then suddenly the king's problem was solved. Now, the knights themselves were supposedly either punished or they were interrogated, and they were eventually let loose because, oh, well, you thought that it was an order when it wasn't actually an order. But did the king intentionally want to have the priest killed or not? Like, there's certain things you can't say. Like, you can't say that, wow, I hope this guy falls over dead from a heart attack, because someone might go out there and stop his heart themselves. Oh boy. Student drivers, man. Cutting people off in the middle of winter with this much ice on the road. Man, this is the school that, by the way, that taught me too. So I hope that teacher is still working there and he just docked points off of him or her. Either way, you can see the problem here. Anyways, yeah, these people, like Tim Walz, like I said, they need to be arrested, because when they refer to ICE as Trump's Gestapo, they are actively encouraging violence. Not passively, actively encouraging it. And it's inappropriate, obviously. But anyways, I'll leave it there, guys, before I start going in circles. Like, rhetoric is dangerous sometimes. And while the Democrats get all emotional and want to ban you for saying that males are male and females are female, Democrats are outright calling legal federal agents acting in accordance with the law fascists, which is 1,000 times more dangerous than hurting someone's feelings. Again, I'll leave it there. That's it, guys. Bye.